In 1491, in the Western Hemisphere, there was 70 million Indians. After 1491, in the first probably 5-6 years, it was down to 7 million.
Hukaklik kun kanus klam. Hun inik tunachats hukaki kachi akam.
In residential school, I was number 3. My Christian name is William Robert Williams. The food wasn't very good. I think a lot of us from residential school have problems staying full. We're always eating because we're always starving.
The most compelling memory and the thing that stayed with me my whole life is how very lonesome, how very lonely it was. A lonely place for a child. That we were institutionalized, and so it was not a place where a child experienced care, love, and warmth. It was just a very cold and lonely place to grow up.
In residential school, when I first started going there, we weren't allowed to sit with family members. There were rules about that. As the system was starting to close down, we were allowed to sit with family. I remember the first time sitting with my sister, because boys and girls were separate. And then one day we got to sit with Gloria, and I was just, holy shit, what the hell? I thought we were going to get into trouble. One experience I had, and there was when I was on a teeter-totter, this guy came up behind me and he pulled me off, and I broke my arm. And it was around supper time, so I had to sit in a room until the priest finished eating. That was about 2 hours. And when I got back to the residential school, I had missed supper, so they gave me 2 pieces of bread, some butter, and a knife. And I looked at it and I said, how the fuck am I supposed to butter that? Crying Hill. Elder Frank Sam, he was from Akiskanook, war vet. He told us a story that when they would come from Akiskanook, all the kids would be in the back of a big truck being hauled to the residential school. And this is on St. Mary's Reserve here, probably about 5 clicks up the road. He said when they came around that corner and they would see the lights, and they'd see that building, and they'd all start crying. And that's why those guys call it Crying Hill.
Yes, there are others of my generation who are still around today. Not enough of us.
When we talk about people not making it from that residential school, we have to remember all the ones that drank themselves to death, killed themselves, are part of the violence that came out of that residential school. I know a lot that have actually committed suicide because of residential school, because of the things that happened there. A lot of us from that system were very, very violent to our spouses and our kids. There's been a lot of death by violence.
I think that the most important sort of lesson that I learned or what I was able to take away from there was a real empathy, because there were so many of us that went through the same experience that I could empathize when people were having difficulty, when people were dealing with their trauma. I could empathize. And that went far beyond just what's happened at the residential school, but just in life in general. I think it's really important to have empathy when you're a leader. And so I think that has really been one of the strengths that I've been able to portray from my experience at the residential school.
A good way to deal with trauma is traditional song and dance. When I sobered up and I started going to dances, I learned how to control or live with a lot of the things that have happened in my life.
I think how we honor their spirits is by what we have done ourselves as the Ktunaxa and the Shuswap Indian Band. How we as our 5 communities have taken back that residential school and turned it around from something so negative into something that is more positive for our future generations. I think that's how we honor them. We don't let it defeat us. And I know that by doing what we have done, we've taken a huge step towards that. The challenge for us to do something came from one of our own elders, Mary Paul, when she heard us talking about how much we had lost in residential school, because we recognized decades ago how much we had lost in terms of language and culture had been taken away from us. Our family structures, like all of that, had been lost because of the residential school. But she challenged us that we needed to take it back. I mean, if we thought that we had lost so much, we needed to take it back. And so she made us that challenge. And it took us a while to really understand what she meant. And so that's why we did what we did. And it was the people's decision. It was not just the leaders. It was everyone. People had a chance to vote whether or not we would turn that. Let it just fall down in ruin, or were we going to take it back? And our 5 communities chose that we're going to take it back and do something with it.
We have to remember this because we don't want this happening to our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren. When people forget the past, it is always bound to repeat itself.